Hi everyone, thank you so much for being here tonight for our talk with curator Suzanne Carte. I'm Leslie York, instructor of ArtNow, director of the Art Gallery. We currently have Suzanne Carte's project, the Artist Material Fund, operating there until November 20th. This project and talk tonight has been organized by Professor Christy Robertson as part of Museum and Curatorial Studies course Waste Stream at the Center for Sustainable Curating. I'd like to take a minute to acknowledge that Western University is located on the traditional territories of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenape, and Chemaktong nations on lands connected with the London Township and Summer Treaties of 1796 and the District Bundsman Covenant Wampum. This land continues to be home to diverse Indigenous peoples who we recognize as contemporary stewards of the land and vital contributors of our society. I think it's important to consider what comes after acknowledgements. This might manifest in simple acts of being present. The new Wampum Learning Lodge on campus is celebrating its grand opening. It's a resource and space that will serve as a touchstone for Indigenous and non-Indigenous communities to gather and learn in the spirit of truth and reconciliation. There are a number of events happening in the space tomorrow, Friday, November 11th, including a guided tour at 11 and artist talks by Shauna Redsky and Shona Simon at 1 p.m. For more information, you can visit their website, indigenouslearningspace.uwo.ca. I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight, Suzanne Carte. Carte is an award-winning curator and cultural producer living in Toronto, Canada. She's a senior curator at the Art Gallery of Burlington, an institution at the intersection of contemporary art and craft. Previously, she was the assistant curator at the Art Gallery of York University, focusing on the integration of exhibitions and public programming for over a decade. Within her independent practice, she's curated exhibitions in public spaces, artist-run centers, and commercial public art galleries. And previously, she held positions as outreach programmer for the Blackwood Gallery and the Art Gallery of Mississauga, and as professional development and public program coordinator at the Ontario Association of Art Galleries. Suzanne holds an MA in Contemporary Art History from Sotheby's Art Institute in New York and a BFA from the University of Windsor. And she was a member of the 2017 Toronto Arts Council Leaders Lab. So please join me in welcoming Suzanne Carte.
I'm going to do this. Is this cool with y'all if I take up my ask? Thank you. So, I'm Suzanne. I'm from Toronto. It's Treaty 13 from the traditional territories, the Huron-Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, as well as Mississauga's the credit. Last night, actually, Dr. Duke Redbird had this amazing talk with Talking Treaties, where there's a new book that just came out that the Toronto Biennial of Art did, along with Art Met. It's sold out right now, but it's a treaty guide for Torontonians, and it just has a new website that launched last night. So if you all are interested, please check it out. It's a really comprehensive and multi-sensorial website specifically talking about the Toronto region. So, couple of disclaimers. One, that this is an amalgamation of a couple of different talks, curatorial, ecological, and also talking about the Artist Material Fund, which I kind of see in and out of my curatorial practice. Also, I have serious popcorn brain. I think it's a couple of things happening there. I think pandemic life, but perimenopause. And so what's going to happen with that is that my brain goes in a whole bunch of weird directions all the time. And trust, you do not want me to be ad lib. So I'm going to do a bit of reading while I go through some of these projects. So it's just really an apology more than anything else of doing reading. So shout out at any moment if you have a question and I can't see y'all, okay? So this is a project that I did that's really kind of indicative of a lot of work that I like to do. This is called the Center for Incidental Activisms. I did it at AGYU. It was a 3-year project. This is, I think this was the second year, working with 5 or 6 artists who constantly transformed the space. This is what it looked like at the very beginning, where we built a whole bunch of different architectural components in the exhibition, where we allowed the artists, or we didn't allow the artists, I felt like they were more these weird insertions to piss the artists off. And they ended up doing this to it by the end of the exhibition. So these are the kind of workshop style exhibitions that I really love. And, you know, I find that when I'm working in a public institution for a longer period of time, not everybody else loves these things. So like putting larger scale exhibitions in between, working with solo artists, or group exhibitions that have this thing that looks like capital A art rather than the workshop. But I really do believe that exhibitions and learning and education and outreach can all exist within the same space and should exist within the same space simultaneously. So sometimes it looks messy. I now am the Senior Curator at the Art Gallery of Burlington. As Liz said, it's a center for craft. We have 9 studios, 3 galleries, as well as a set of like meeting spaces, and that I know nothing about craft, nothing. So for me to come into a space that basically has one of the largest collections of contemporary clay in the country it was hard because not everybody enjoyed the way that I was dissecting the collection or trying to understand the collection, but I feel as though it's been a bit of a process, and then bringing me into the institution meant that they were really desiring change. But what kind of change that meant and the ways in which it fit within the agendas of the audience, the board, and the current staff was really, you know, it's been 4 years, and it's, as you know, like over 2 of that have been within the pandemic. So it's been hard, but it's also been really, really fruitful. And I think that I've made some friends, but I've also pissed a lot of people off. So the Gender Conspiracy was the first exhibition that I did when I came in. And when you're working in an institution, a lot of times what you get is a curatorial portfolio. Like I work 2 to 3 years in hand. And what I mean by that is the fact that I have up till 2025 already curated. So all of those things, the commitments have been made to artists. And when you come into an institution, a lot of times you're satiating the contracts that other curators have put in place. And sometimes it's not the curators that you're satiating, but it's also funders. And so what happened is when I first came in, the first exhibition that I had to take over was really a skeleton. It was like scaffolding that they kept calling the gay show. So the gay show, I first said that I was like, I'm not gonna do a gay show. I find that as someone who identifies as queer, I was like, I'm not going to go in and do a gay show. I find that humiliating, and I'm just not going to do it. And it's like every show will be gay, and in some way. And it's like, so why is it that you have to produce an exhibition that puts some sort of weird stamp on it? Like the next show is going to be your Indigenous show, and then you're going to do your Black show, and then you're going to cycle through all of these tokenized categories, and then you're going to recycle back again, or maybe go back to something that feels more comfortable for the audiences that they feel as though they've cultivated. So when I told them that I wasn't going to do the gay show, I was told that actually no, funder had paid for the gay show. They were going to get the gay show, and it really was like all of the work that I was seeing that had been written, that had been done, it was like feather boas and it was glitter. It was like the kind of very sanitized version that one might see of Pride via a corporate model of Pride. So I had no idea what the fuck I was gonna do with this, other than the fact that Ford handed me this beautiful package. Ford decided, my coming in, that he was going to remove LGBTQ from the elementary school system. When I was there, in the limited time that I was there, I realized that we had hundreds, if not thousands, of school-age kids in through the gallery over the course of the year. And it was like, oh yeah, it really did hit me, because I'd come from a university model. Well, of course education is baked into the exhibitions that you do. But to be in a public model and not really understand that completely until I saw these school age kids. And I was like, oh yeah. So if Ford's going to remove this from your education, I'm going to like posit it back in again. So the exhibition really did become about education. So the gender conspiracy, and here's the list of artists who are participating in it, became an open letter to the trans and gender diverse communities of the GTHA, the Greater Toronto and Hamilton area. So it was meant to express like allyship, to furthering the discourse on gender fluidity and identity, sexual orientation, same-sex relationships and consent, to promote the mental health and safety of the LGBTQ2ISA communities. And the exhibition included work of 18 Canadian artists who were working in like moving image and photography, and leaders who were really witnessing and bearing witness to the ongoing struggles of violence and discrimination. So here's the list of artists. It's the opening wall. So this also came, it was the 50th anniversary of Stonewall Riots, which, as you may or may not know, solidified the LGBTQ2IA movement in the States, and also was the first steps towards decriminalization of homosexuality in Canada. But at that time, our rights were really being threatened, and the basic responsibilities of education and care were being removed. The government implemented numerous cuts, as I mentioned, not only to education, but mental health funding, public health, and so the disturbing changes were really disproportionately affecting the marginalized communities among us. So gay straight alliances at that time too. So this was like late, it was 2019. So at this time, like gay straight alliances in schools were being nullified, they were being closed down. So as that eradication was happening, like communities were being oppressed and policed from the far right extremist groups, and hate crimes were growing across the country. But at that time, there was a pride parade in Hamilton, which is our neighboring city, where there was a violent outburst. And then the individuals who were then charged and detained were trans people. So my questions were, why are we moving backwards? How can we as activists, advocates, queers, feminists, anti-racist leaders safeguard a next generation from rampant transphobia, erasure, and exposure? So this exhibition worked to place the lives of genderqueer individuals at the fore, to express our vigilant commitment to supporting the dialogue to address those key issues, and also like tackle the precarity of queerness and address the emotional well-being and vulnerability of the communities through these photographs and moving images. So here you see a snippet of Chase Joint, which it was a short at that time. It was Framing Agnes, and it was a short at that time, but it's actually gone on to be a feature-length film, and he's been in like every film festival since with it. Cyrus Marcus Ware and Raven Davis there. We ended up destroying a lot of like wall space, but then also building these two theater spaces. Here you see the work of Wynne Neely and Kyle Lasky. And then the video room off to the side there. Sorry, that's Framing Agnes in the one little theater area. Samra Habib, Kamala Mackrell, Castles, and Shaw Gray, which was in the other theater space. At that time, we worked with EGAL, which is the Human Rights Trust. So they came in because I also realized that in bringing a bunch of trans folks into the gallery space, that we needed to do a lot of work to safeguard them in that space. So EGAL came in and did a number of safer spaces, training programs, not only with the staff, but with our audiences. McMaster University, the Department of Gender Studies and Feminist Research came in, and they were our gender inclusion consultants, so worked with our washroom signage, And then we also built another GSA outside of the high school for the high school students to come to. And then we built an education guide. So the education guide has actually become a feature with all the exhibitions that we produce at AGB now. But the one thing has shifted. We called one of them the family version or the kids guide, and then the other guide was like the adult version of it. But actually the language in the two were exactly the same. The only thing that was different was the fact that the kids version had like maybe a couple of coloring pages, but the language was the same between the two. So now we've decided to eradicate an adult version, and that everything that we do for every exhibition is just a family guide, or it's just a guide, and it just happens to have more activities that they can do together. So I think that all exhibitions are opportunities for learning, but that also includes me. I learn as I go through these. I learn from artists, but I learn from my public as well. But that can be really scary as fuck too when you're having to learn in public, because you fail in public. You fail in public a lot, and it's really humbling, but it's also terrifying. So I kind of use exhibitions as test sites. So they're the ability to they could do anything from what you see now with the possibilities of economic solidarity, but they can also work to bring artists into dialogue with one another. So I did an exhibition called the Division of Labor, which is my next one. It was a 2-part exhibition, brought artists into dialogue with one another around issues of class and race and labor as they related to cultural waste. So the first edition was held at the Workers' Arts and Heritage Center in Hamilton, and a year later at the Art Gallery of Burlington. So it was built to consider the true costs of artists' labor, and economic parity through the recovery of and access to excess material. So at its core, it was like a barter economy with critical discourse around consumptions and circuits of solidarity exchange that really felt more than ever really present in the daily working lives of artists and cultural workers. The exhibition was not only simply to display objects that were made and constructed from trash, but worked to build new networks and resources and methods for sustainability of artist practices. So here is, this artist list is the list of artists that were participating in the second version of it at the Art Gallery of Burlington. So the project was split, as I said, into 2 parts. And that, again, is to if we're talking about artist labor and cultural labor, is like, how is it that you capitalize and build from one iteration to the next? So all the research that was done the first time, you capitalize off of that investment, physical, emotional, intellectual, that goes into temporary exhibition production. And the real-time learning came from a way of like a robust ancillary program that we worked with to create critical discussions around scarcity of resources, labor rights, and lack of living wages for artists. So we had a couple, so this is again one of my proud moments, is that this, as you can see, this is a house that was built. It was a 2-story house that was built by Nico Fleming. And so the entire exhibition was built, and I think the only thing we bought was a box of 1,000 screws for the house itself. So the construction of a 2-story home was from waste from other exhibitions. So and then like over a short period of time, like just like unbelievable that you can build a house with what gets thrown out in the GTHA alone. So here you see one of his couches here in the room. And then I started to play with our permanent collection. So the piece in the back is a pot, a vessel by artist Christopher Reed Flock. And so started to put, as I said, permanent collection works in the house, because as we have a whole bunch of these domestic wares, it's like putting them back into a domestic setting felt good. So the panel discussions that we had around the exhibition was around the lived realities of precarious and self-organized labor. It's really integral to cultural production. We had artist talks, monthly workshops with the Repair Cafe. I don't know if you have a Repair Cafe in London.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah? They're amazing. If you have anything that you need fixing, it's like they teach you how to repair it, and then you have that skill set, so it's not like you just drop it off, they fix it and you pick it up. It's like being alongside them. And it's like a living library where you're able to receive this knowledge and skill share with people. We also had weekly lunch and learn sessions with Burlington Green and Environmental Association in the city on cost-effective and simple ways to reduce your carbon footprint at home and for mindful consumption. So yeah, when it launched, I would not have imagined that we would have been experiencing the intense escalation of poverty, unemployment, housing insecurity, wage gaps, class divides, and environmental collapse in the most visceral way that we are right now. And then it's the work of Patrick Cruz, and then Adam Stanfrani in the back. So this is an image that I always, and I say this every time, should I lead with this image or should I end with this image? But this is half of the trash that we threw out at the end of the exhibition. And this was an exhibition that had an environmental theme, mindful focus. Yeah, in its very design, it was meant to not produce this. It was a zero waste model. But a couple of things happened. The contributing factors were pandemic related. So 3 artists lost their studios, another one relocated, and we had to think about what it meant to trash, or like fly trash halfway across the country. And yeah, so many of the programs that we were actually going to also be giving materials to weren't open and weren't able to receive information or receive stuff at the time too. So even though like this dumpster full of waste is like a hypocritical nightmare, the majority of or part of the exhibition was successful. And so the successful part was diverting trash from other institutions. So the program of the Artist Material Fund was also in the middle of the exhibition space. So this is when I showed you the image of Ja Gray, the video work. We ended up just cutting a hole in the door there and spinning it around to be an additional wall for the work of Robert. But this turned into an Artist Material Fund. And if you haven't had an opportunity to go and pick up your own usable waste from the Art Lab, please do, and see the signage outside that kind of positions it. But I think that the Artist Material Fund is a service that relocates material and diminished waste produced in the art industry while providing resources for artistic production. So the program has been running unfunded and ad hoc for about 8 years to support and promote the sharing of underused goods in an effort to realize the full potential value and build more efficient studios and workshops. It's a platform rooted in cooperation and mutual aid, which is intentionally operates outside the capitalist consumerist model. So the Artist Material Fund strives to create one viable alternative to the common issue of fiscal precarity and ecological irresponsibility by collecting materials from local cultural institutions and making them available to artists for free. So as you might know, again, the rules are really simple. First come, first serve. There's no limit to what you take, but take only what you need. So what do we learn from the division of labor? One is that the Artist Material Fund is a temporary solution to a permanent problem of cultural waste. And 2, that activating a shared economy can lessen the environmental impact of exhibition production, and that all exhibitions are learning opportunities to change the very fabric of institutions which house and build them. So what we learn from environmentally themed exhibitions must be carried forward and utilized in every program thereafter. So like, let's take the life cycle of a piece of drywall from Nico Fleming's house. Yeah, so it first entered the cultural arena, probably from Home Depot, as a 4x8 quarter-inch slab of paper and sheetrock. And it entered the Gardner Museum in 2018. It was formed on the walls of Yoko Ono's Riverbed exhibition, which was demolished 4 months later. Then it moved from that point, or it would have at that point moved to a dumpster, which many of the pieces did. But instead, Nico got his hands on it and moved to the Koffler and created an apartment for the Undomesticated show that was curated by Mona Phillips. Then it moved to the AGB to support a 2-story house in the Division of Labor. And then it displayed on a rotational projects at the Visual Arts Clarington Public Space Exhibition Series, which was seating for Sartee's public programming. It was plinths for the Ward Collective's floral arrangements, which you had Petrina here the other day, who was probably talking about those. And then a staircase for Joshua Vetavelu's wax sculptures. So, and who knows what its adventures might be next. But even if it is the end of the line for this hard-working piece of drywall, it had a much longer life than it would have entering the gallery system at the Gardner. So if we are gallery professionals, if we all look to Nico's practice of material exploration as a source of inspiration to salvage and redistribute. So, because we need to be in this together. So the idea of being in this together. So it was a bit of a rallying cry during the pandemic. Through all of our lockdowns and closures, we're in this together. But through illness and job loss, we were in this together. To some, the global health crisis represented a shared experience, yet with unequal distributions of wealth, power, access, and privilege, it was far from a leveling agent. Yes, we might be in this together, but we're all working from very different vantage points in different spaces and realities. So within the Canadian cultural context, part of this is because we're built on a system of competition. So scarcity finds us all clamoring for the same governmental grants, foundational support, and philanthropic attention. Competition and fear impede our ability to build stronger connections and collectivity, to reflect our budgetary concerns, discuss worker burnout, also employ equitable policy development, and build more efficient spaces. So as whereas some galleries and museums over the past 2 years were able to find immediate solutions to physical and mental health and safety of our communities, others struggled with the capacity to formulate digital strategies and build physically safer spaces with plexi barriers, access to PPE, and testing, and addressing significant systemic issues of discrimination and exploitation. So we really failed at building pathways on how to be in this together. So, but we can no longer afford to remain divided, especially in the rapid movement of the climate crisis. How can we as cultural institutions and industry shift and focus intentionally on being together and supporting climate justice reform and collectively address our ecological budget? I can still hear the UN Secretary General, who spoke this last week at COP27, as Antonio Guterres' opening remarks stated, we're on the highway to climate hell with our foot still on the accelerator. So what can we do to produce a sector in which values of sharing as a way towards a reduced waste and reserve energy? So how do we keep ideas like this to continue to be alive? And that's where the future of work comes in. It's a 3-part exhibition series formulated as sites of continual research, again, on the labor markets, essential work, equity, and mobility. So working in collaboration with the Workers' Arts and Heritage Center, the exhibitions are a process to examine how the pandemic has affected the labor markets and quality of life. So the curatorial collective is myself, Chamoy Mitra, Simranpreet Nandan, and Adrian Hewart to create the 3 distinct platforms for conversations surrounding precarious labor, which Simranpreet and Chamoy have up right now, the Workers' Arts and Heritage, and then Parallel Economies, which is the one that I worked on, and Labor Futurisms, which Adrian is working on now. So, as I said, the Parallel Economies is on right now at the AGB. So this chapter specifically explores emerging and established diverse economies, radical new forms of production and alternatives, and ways in which the industrial sectors exploit resources and workers. So the exhibition and program series feature artists and cultural workers who have, within solidarity economies, focus on mutual aid, formulate anti-capitalist methods and strategies around worker co-ownership, financial justice, peer-to-peer, climate justice reform, gift economies. So, and the artists are Just Seeds, Christina Battle, Jeffrey Gibson, Good School, which is part of Rangrupa, Works in Progress, Daria Ake, Gendai Gallery, which I think that again, when Katrina was here, might have talked to you a little bit about the labor work that she's doing with us. Jennifer Dallas Reyes and Junan, Janine Franey Jutli, Gabrielle Lerondale Hill, Chandra Melding Tallow, and Tanya Willard. So we also worked with a number of community organizers from the arts and crafts guilds that are in the region, local gardeners, historians, and restaurants, as well as the Burlington Public Library. The Pink Project, which was a project where it's two high school students that have been working diligently in bringing menstrual products, free menstrual products into public buildings in the city. And Brock University's Department of Labor Studies. So what is a parallel economy and what does it look like in a gallery? So through formalized networks and communications and organizations, they can build systems which enable a more sustained practice of temporary exhibition cycles. And in practical terms, it means collectively repurposing exhibition materials, building generative models, to support exhibition construction, develop non-monetary exchanges, co-owning, audiovisual equipment to mitigate electronic waste, but also building tool libraries, generating lists of ethical manufacturers, fabricators, boring furniture and displays, coordinating joint shipping schedules, and sharing the eco-design strategies. So I can also point to all the work that Kirsty has done in compiling and sharing this information of eco-minded exhibition design with you all, with guidebooks and using the resources at hand. So creating formal, this is just one of the exhibition views. So creating formal pathways for sharing resources can change the competitive culture that our sectors are in, and provide real alternatives and participate in democratic cooperation. Because using the principles of shared economy prioritizes people and the planet over profit and production. Therefore, integrating a shared system also means not extracting value from cultural workers, but encouraging a network knowledge system of disciplines across institutions to provide open source and copyleft materials and modes of production.
Please try again.
Here's the wall that I did with 3 Brock University students from the Labor Studies Department, where it was really, what is a parallel economy? When we say that word, it can become quite nebulous. So it was what does it actually look like? So in working alongside organizations who aggregate information too on accountable systems of carbon reporting, so such as Creative Green and the Center for Curatorial Sustainability in Canada, but Julie's Bicycle and the Gallery Climate Coalition and LEAD in the UK. We can learn how to track the realities of our institution's carbon footprint, And this will allow staff to build concrete plans and reduce the consumption and waste by collecting and analyzing the data of greenhouse gas emissions, energy usage, waste, travel, water consumption, and chemical management. So as a team, we can build anti-waste exhibition manifestos and environmental policies, communicate clearly with artists and curators at the beginning of the process. So discuss what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, and what you won't compromise on, and have an open conversation about the material and where it will go at the end of an exhibition. As I said, this all sounds really basic enough to implement, but I'm not gonna lie, like it's painful. Because artists and curators push back and demand the excessive fabrication of displays and apparatuses of vinyl to execute what we've internalized as being like a professional design aesthetic and standard for exhibitions, where it's a model of overconsumption. So most of this is, even the most progressive person will ignore a bin of waste to be able to produce what they believe to be the polished and perfect exhibition. So we need to resist, and we really need to kind of be in this together. That's about it. That's me. So I usually don't like to name names, but the reason why I really started the Artist Material Fund was the ROM. I started dumpster diving at the ROM for about a year, and they had the best garbage. So I would take all the ROM's garbage. The AGYU, they hide their garbage, so you can't get access to their bins. So what I did is I started mapping out all the galleries in the areas where I could actually access their bins. And I would look at their exhibition schedules and find out when it was that they were going to be closing, knowing from working with installation schedules, when the bins might appear, what could possibly be in them. So we drove around with a truck, dumpster dived at night, and then we'd open up the truck in artist studio parking lots and just have at her. But another thing that happens with economic disparity is that artists get pushed out of areas. And in Toronto, almost all of the areas that were once artist studios, where I could do that easily, park into a parking lot and open up the back, are now all condos. So as they've dispersed and gone into other areas, it's much harder to be able to do that. So then that's when I started contacting other cultural organizations and asking them if I could have space. But also it's not free. And it was something that was out of pocket for a long time, of buying or renting trucks. And then also paying people for their labor. So having people in the truck with me, because there was things that I literally just could not get out of a dumpster or couldn't get out of the back of a truck too. So, and then we became, anyways, it grew from there. But now it's been the most funded program that has been in a long time. And Evergreen Brickworks is going to take it up next year. They did one this past year, and it was great. And seeing the life cycle of an object is pretty fantastic. It's part of what I love what I do is because of the stories that are attached to the material itself. Seeing it in an exhibition space, then seeing it in the garbage, and then seeing it under someone's arm on the way out the door for another life is really, it means a lot.